Hey, I'm Laurie and welcome back to the Diaries of the Neurospicy Coach. I believe this is episode 8 now. And today I want to talk about why neurodivergent women are more prone to burnout. I'll do like a little bit of a story tell first, because the reason why I want to speak about this is because the last few weeks I've been speaking about this to one of my clients. And it's just coming to light because you've normalized it for such a long time, she's not even aware that it's a burnout cycle. And I'll also talk about my experience as well, and then I'll go into what it is and obviously how to avoid it essentially. So my burnout cycle happened, oh God, a few years ago now. I was planning on competing for my pro card, my IPB pro card. It was like beginning of that journey. And I wanted to compete in November because I really wanted to do the earlier shows because I wanted to be there for my clients because my clients were competing as well further on in the year. And obviously I got so excited that I had lots of athletes because I went off on my own. I was with like a coaching team, a well-known coaching team, and then I went off on my own. So I was just excited. So even though it shows up as a passion, I didn't know it was a burnout cycle happening. And essentially what I was doing, I was traveling to all client shows, but rather than sort of putting them in just the same sort of ones, because my girls love it as well, like if they're not on their own. So I don't know why I didn't do that, but here we go. And I was also going to all my pausing clients shows as well. So that meant every single weekend, like I'm talking every single weekend from spring till autumn, I was traveling, and it'd be like coming from Kent, I'd be going to Wales, and then I'd be traveling up north the next day and then back to Kent, and the next weekend it'd be like Braywick, wherever. And it got to towards the end of autumn, and I thought, oh, maybe I've got like seasonal depression, I don't know really know what's going on. And when I was meant to start prep, I just didn't want to. Like, I felt in love with training. I just didn't want to go to the gym anymore. My coach wasn't very like supportive either, so obviously that didn't help. And I was just like, oh, maybe competing's just not for me anymore. Like I just don't want to train anymore, and that's not like me. People always decide not to compete and whatever, but they don't normally step out of competing and never want to train ever again. So I was just sat there. I was just crying all the time. It was almost like I felt angry, irritated, numb, sad, and I just never experienced that before. So I just literally took a few weeks out. I hardly trained. Um, and then all of a sudden I came back to life, and I was like, that's so weird. But I didn't even recognize, like I didn't even sit there and be like, oh, do you know what? You've done a lot this summer. Like you've not taken, I literally was working 7 days a week, like traveling, I was around people all the time. Being neurodivergent, being around people all the time is not something I'm we good at. And yeah, I just hit extreme burnout, and it took me months to get out of. So I didn't actually start my prep until like I want to say like another 8 months later. Um, which for me, I didn't even recognize. And I was speaking to one of my clients, and she's sort of going through it at the minute now, where she have always been go 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 all the time. She doesn't recognize her burnout. She just thinks that she's just a bit tired, whatever. But I know she won't mind me talking about this. But she has a really busy job. It's a very good job that she has. But now she wants to do sort of like the booty side of things as well for shows. So that means she's obviously working Monday to Friday and then traveling for shows as well. And she said to me, I did my training last week, but I literally just got through the week. I said, what do you mean? She was like, I just felt completely numb. I don't really know what was going on. I was just going through the motions. I didn't really feel anything. And I was like, right, we need an intervention because you're on the brim of burnout. And she was like, oh yeah, I know, she was like, it's just so hard. And we just spoke about like what she wanted to get out of the beauty thing. Because sometimes when you go after something like, being self-employed, burnout's going to happen, right? Because working 2 full-time jobs for anyone is going to be exhausting, right? For me, when I started my online coaching, I was pretty much working like 3 full-time jobs. So but you're going to have a burnout, unfortunately. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those things. So it's like a risk to reward sort of thing. It's temporary. But if it's not temporary and this is your real life, you need to sit down and be like, right, okay, am I choosing money or health? Because that's ultimately what it's coming down to, and with this particular client, we've already seen patterns with our stress and things like that showing up in blood work. So we already know it's already affecting her, not just mentally, but physically as well. So, we spoke about that, and she was just like, oh wow, like it makes so much sense you're saying that. She's like, it's mad that I can't recognize that, but because we're so used to being workaholics then, and loving our jobs as well, because that's another thing. When you love your job, it doesn't feel like work, but it is work. Of course it's work. Do you know what I mean? And like I said to her, because she wants to compete next year, I was like, how's that going to look for you? And she was like, oh, I've worked it out, like I'm going to not do makeup at that time, work wherever. Like it's in her head, it was planned. Like she had this down, down to a T. But I was like, but what about getting there? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you're burning out now. So I was like, if you're burnt out, you're not going to be in a position to want to prep, be physically in a good place to prep. So I was like, you need to think about that. Don't think about when it's there. Think about before it's there. And I explained my story, and she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize that. And I see that so often with my girls, that these are like triggers for burnout. And when they burnout happens, they don't even know it's a burnout. They just think that, oh, I'm lazy, I'm depressed. This is where when burnout happens, we normally go to the GP, and this is where they're like, oh, take antidepressants. And you're just like, oh, okay, and you just think I don't feel depressed, but I must be, because my GP have told me, But I've got my trusty notes, as you know, and I'm just going to bullet point everything that I want to talk about, right? So what burnout actually is, right? Because, for neurotypicals, burnout would just be a bit tired, get over in a few days, good to go. But what it actually is, it's not just tiredness, it's extreme fatigue, like extreme fatigue. You wake up in the morning and you struggle, like you have lower motivation, like everything feels slow. All the interests that you're really passionate about, you're no longer passionate about them. The gym, if you like, I don't know, doing hair, like whatever your passion is, horse riding, I don't know, like anything, that's so random. But it might be, do you know what I mean? You're no longer interested, you don't want to do it. And it's like weird too, because then you question, you're like, oh, well, I'm ADHD, maybe it's one of those things where, I do this all the time and I'm no longer interested. It's a different kind. It's not like, nah, I can't be asked to do anymore. It's like, you can't even bear to look at it. You don't want to do it. Depression. So this is another thing. It's like a lot of women come to me and they're like, they're on anxiety tablets or antidepressants. And I look at their life and I'm like, your life is one big burnout. Do you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, really? But this is normal for me. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's normal. Do you know what I mean? Just because you're used to it and familiar doesn't mean it's okay. And then you got anxiety. So anxiety will show up with that as well. So it's just basically feeling like a shell of yourself. Like you don't feel like you anymore. You don't want to see anyone. You don't want to go anywhere. That's basically what like a burnout is, right? So it can also look like a personality change. So you might even find that you might fall out with friends and stuff like that, or partners, because you become flat, low libido. Like if someone, if your partner tries to hug you or wherever, you're not interested, that can end up in arguments and things like that. And you just feel like, you just don't feel like you anymore. And honestly, like I remember feeling like that. And it was just wild to me, because I've been competing, God, like 8 years now. So when I thought I didn't want to compete anymore, just before chasing my pro card, it didn't make sense to me. And I was just like, I know I'm not depressed. I know I'm not. I know I'm not, But yeah, for us, it's like we feel flat, brain fog, like let's put it as PMS week, but a really bad PMS week. You're like that 24/7. That's the best way that I can actually explain, right? Masking, right? So masking is a hidden drain, right? So a lot of people reach burnout just by masking, and that comes under people pleasing, right? So we are natural born people pleasers. We want to please everyone. We're scared to disappoint anyone. We want to be perfect all the time. But being perfect all the time, honestly, is exhausting. So, like, for example, like if you've got a project in work, and you want to nail it, and the thing is, like with employers, if you're not self-employed, they will squeeze you for everything that you have. So if you do a project and you are literally working day and night, day and night, day and out, and then you do it because you want to be perfect a day and you want to, people to be like, oh, wow, it's amazing. Your employer's like, oh, well, let's say Nancy, for example, Nancy got this project done and she did it all on her own. We don't need another 3 people on that now. She can just do it because we'll pay her the same. It's going to cost us less, so we can do that. And this is what happens then. And then you're then held to this high standard and you're like, oh, shit, like I've just dug myself a hole and I'm in it. But you won't say no. You won't say that I had to hyper focus on that. I've not slept for 10 days. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that element of it as well. Or it could be through friendships and stuff, because, you know, with people pleasing, we usually put everyone else before us, before our needs, you know, for everyone else to go first. Do you know what I mean? So it's like if you had a day of like a pamper day, for example, and you want to have your nails done, whatever, and then your friend's like, oh, can you come over, please? I really need you. You're like, oh, yeah, okay. And even though you might be running on zero, and you've been feeling really like not confident, feeling really crap, and you're having a pamper day, you're having your hair done, you've cancelled that day now because you really need to be there for your friend. That's also masking. That's also people pleasing. This also goes to burnout, because at the end of the day, you stop listening to your needs, and you're putting other people's needs ahead of you, and that can be with fitness, with just life, with work, and things like that. So that also will trigger a burnout as well. And as I said, like high functioning women as well with work, that's probably one of the biggest things that I do see. And especially like my beauty girls, I always speak about my beauty girls because it's true. And I think we are all to blame for that as well, because, you know, if imagine now your nail artist cancels on you last minute because they burnt out, you're gonna be like, fuming about it. But you just actually look at it, if in reverse, you would be like, oh no, you know, I don't want you to be burnt out. Do you know what I mean? But with the beauty industry, to look, I don't know whether it's to look successful or to be successful or for money or not to let people down. It's a mixture of different reasons. But the beauty industry, for some reason, feels like they need to be fully booked from 9 a.m. until, sometimes, I know some of my girlies do like 12-hour shifts, wild. And for neurodivergent brains, being around people for 12 hours, oh my God, like I could never, like the thought of them makes me feel sick. I have anxiety thinking about that, but that's a reality of it. And when I first coach some of my beauty girls, they don't eat. And then they wonder why they're binging in the night. And I'm like, right, so you're telling me that you've been working back to back for 12 hours and you're wondering why you're binging in the night. One is because you're starving. Another one's because your blood sugars have dropped. And another one then is like you're chasing dopamine. Like you're just, it's just wild to me. So it's like you keeping yourself at a higher standard, but that's not a higher standard. Neglecting yourself is not a higher standard, right? And especially if you've not been diagnosed either. So like that's another thing. When you're masking, like for me, I look back and I'm like, wow, I masked through drinking loads of alcohol and partying and things like that because I basically didn't want to feel like me. It was a coping mechanism, do you know what I mean? And I didn't realize that until I got my diagnosis, and I was like, wow, like I thought I just enjoyed that, but actually I couldn't have a social setting with a lot of people unless I was pissed out of my head. Do you know what I mean? So that can be another thing as well. Then you got the hyper focus and crash cycle, right? So we don't do moderate, right? We go all in or nothing at all, right? But if we commit to something, we go all in, and hyper focus happens, but we don't take any breaks. And I got some girlies as well who do projects and stuff, and it's wild. Like, yeah, no, I've not slept. You know, I've had to go through the night, and I'm like, did you have to, or did your brain just tell you had to? Because there's a big difference. And the thing is, being neurodivergent, the worry we have if we have the hyper focus going, because usually as well, we have, say for example, like when you're in college or whatever, you'll have a month to do coursework. How many of us didn't do it until the night before because we had that pressure of like, can't concentrate, don't know what I'm doing, and then suddenly 24 hours before we know what to do and we rush in. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we also got that as well, where we just dig ourselves a hole. Do you know what I mean? And that tends to be like what happens as well. And then because we're in that hyper focused state, we're scared of stopping. Because if we stop, we're scared then that we'll start procrastinating again and then we never go back into it. So it's almost like we don't trust ourselves. Because obviously you've got like the Pomodoro technique, which is amazing. But again, I know a lot of us don't use it because we're scared. So like Pomodoro technique is basically like, okay, it's a way of like getting you to work in the first place. So for example, it'd be like, right, work for 15 minutes, stop, and then you like rest for 10 minutes and then do it again, sort of thing. But a lot of us won't have that rest period, because if we lock in within that 15 minutes, it's like, right, okay, I'm locked in, I'm not going to stop now because I'm scared. But then I know we're very productive like that, but guess what? You probably are not going to be functioning for the next 2 days if you keep doing that. So it's almost good to like look at what you're doing and planning ahead. But this is what I work with my girls with as well, because a lot of them don't even recognize these things that goes on. And the problem with this is like you don't know you're in the crash until it hits. And that's the thing, it's like out of sight, out of mind. It's like with most people, if they work in and they can feel themselves getting tired and they're like, right, okay, I'm just going to take myself away from this, change an environment, go and get some steps in, have some food. We don't sense it. It's the same as like hunger cues. Like we don't know we're hungry until it smashes in the face and we're starving and we're like, need to binge, need to eat anything that's in front of me because I feel like I'm going to faint. It's almost like that feeling. Obviously, you're not going to faint from it, but we don't know the crash is happening until we're very much in it. And that's why we tend to have extreme burnouts happen, because we don't know the early signs of it, right? People pleasing and notice depletion. Obviously, I just spoke about this as well. Just overriding exhaustion and stuff like that. So I won't go over that again because I just basically talked about that. And obviously how fitness and competing can obviously accelerate this as well, right? Because with prep, for example, I'll do prep and fitness because obviously I know not all my audience here compete. But like this is why we see girls thrive in prep. And I'll do another podcast on this because it goes so much deeper than that. But we'll thrive in prep, right? Our whole personality is prep, right? Everything's prep, everything's this, whatever. So we doing our cardio, like we doing our steps, we smashing our food, like we got no time for anyone else, like we just hyper focus on this goal, and then that goal goes. And then we don't tend to do very well in off season. Our reverse tends to go to shit. And then our off season's just terrible and we tend to put on weight really fast. And it's because we have burnt ourselves out from competing. Do you know what I mean? And I know like obviously competing it's obviously it's fatiguing, it's hard, do you know what I mean? But we take it to another level. We take it to another level, do you know what I mean? So we can run off no sleep, because with neurodivergent people, women then should we say, we can give ourselves fake energy, right? And it's called adrenaline, right? So adrenaline we can have pumping, and when we're excited about something and passionate about something, it shows up as fake energy, but it's not, it's adrenaline, right? Which is the worst thing for us, because obviously once it stops, crash happens. Like I don't know if you've ever been around people like for a long period of time, for example, like this happens to me all the time as well. Like I'm pretty burnt out from May, because if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I had lots on because my 30th, then team shoot, whatever. But like for example, if you go on holidays for 2 weeks with your family, friends, and there's loads of people, whatever, loving it, don't feel burnt out because you're loving each day, you're eating foods and it's just really nice, you feel like, oh, this is amazing. Do you feel relaxed when you come home? No, right? Because soon as you're on your own and you're by yourself, after being like, go, 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 the crash happens. And that's where the burnout happens, because we have an element of masking going on. You might have an element of people pleasing, but it's usually masking. And that's the hardest part, because people think masking is only if we're in an environment where we don't feel safe or we're not very confident or anything like that. But masking is showing up for yourself every single day around lots of people, around loads of overstimulation, but you don't, it's like subconsciously stored in your brain, where it's like it's all the noises around, but you're not really focused on that because you're enjoying yourself. So when you're around people, and it doesn't even have to be a 2 week holiday, you can honestly, if I travel to a show, I'm so burnt out the next day, honestly, because it's loud, there's loads of people, do you know what I mean? So a lot of people are not aware of that. I think and that's not saying like don't go on holidays, don't go to shows, just stay in your house on your own and never leave, I'm not saying that, but be aware of it. And this is why I say to my girls all the time, like, prepare to feel like rubbish for a few days and don't spiral, because there's nothing worse than like, again, it's the same sort of feeling when you don't track your cycle, when luteal happens or PMS happens, and you're like, why do I feel like this? Oh my God, like my world is ending. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm due on 2 days. Okay, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like that. So it's like, prepare to be burnt out. Like, prepare for it. Like, make sure your meal prep's done. Stay hydrated. There's things you can do to keep on top of it, rather than you hitting your face, and you're like, oh wow, why am I feel obviously just depressed today, and I have no reason. I have no reason why. Right, you don't start today, please. I'm so sorry, but we've got workmen next door, honestly. Ted, shh. Right, okay, come here, Ted, come and join our podcast, Ted. Okay, and then why rest doesn't always work, right? So in our heads, like when burnout happens, we like, and especially I'm not slagging off any coaches, by the way, right? I'm not. But a neurotypical coach to you now, if you said to them, oh, I'm feeling really tired, I'm feeling really low, they'll say to you, take some rest days, and that's it, right? And here you are trying to rest, right? You're sitting down, put some tally on, and your brain's going, you're lazy, you're lazy, you're lazy, you know, what are you doing? You're failing. This is what your brain is telling you, right? And then you get up and you start potching and you're no longer resting, right? So when you're with a neurotypical coach, they don't understand, because obviously their burnout can be sorted with a early night, nice bath, like, just no, it doesn't happen. And so for us to really deal with it, we need to prevent it first of all, so it doesn't really smack us in the face. But the typical resting methods does not work for our brains, and that's just because we tend to not be able to sit still. So yeah, if someone says just rest, that's probably the worst thing, because especially if you have hyperactive ADHD, people think hyperactive ADHD is like bouncing off the walls, right? But it's not, right? It can be hyperactive in your mind. So that's where we have bad anxiety, and it's like we just basically shout to ourselves in our brains. And I know that sounds weird, but anyone who's got that, like me, they'll know what I mean by that, because we aren't very kind to ourselves. So the thoughts we have manifest, and we are wired to think negatively. And that's not because we are, oh, we just love to be negative, we're just negative peeps. It's not that. It's our brains are trying to like protect us and save us, and it just tries to look after us. But unfortunately that shows up as being negative, and convinces you that you're a shit person, right? And you're not, right? So obviously, as I said, like, you got guilt during downtime, your brain tells you you've been lazy, and recovery just doesn't happen, right? It just doesn't, right? So the guilt and the shame layer, right? So when we get burnt out, we just have like this vicious cycle, because a lot of my girlies who come to me, they hate rest days, right? So if I say to them, like, you train on these days, you rest on these days, and they're like, oh, I can't do that, I can't rest. So I always say to like do active rest days. So my rest days, for example, I'm not doing nothing. I can't, right? I'm not somebody like who sits down. The only time I sit down on this settee is when I do content in the evenings. But I've got my telly on as background noise, right? If I sit here in silence, I would go insane. Like, even now I can hear my fridge going, like I can just hear everything. I can hear my brain, right? So it just doesn't work for us, right? So active rest days, I like to call it, and that doesn't mean doing high rocks on your rest days either, by the way, right? It can be like going up for some steps, getting your food shopping, like just doing things so you're resting from the gym, but you're not, being glued to your settee, because sometimes we don't move either if we're that burnt out. Do you know what I mean? So it just doesn't work for us at all, right? So burnout confirms the inner critic. Can you tell I'm on day 2 of menstrual cycle? It confirms the inner critic, right? So we have self-doubt, right? Usually. So before you come to me, you'd have self-doubt. After you come to me, you won't anymore, right? But a lot of women have a lot of limiting beliefs. So they'll say to themselves, like, I spoke to one of my clients actually. She did, I know she wouldn't mind me saying this, I won't mention any names, but she did the photo shoot, and she kept saying to me, oh, I know I will never look like those girls, oh, I know I'll never be lean. And I'm like, why? Why? And she was like, oh, I just don't think it'll happen to me. But I was like, but you're doing the work, so why would it happen to you? We have these limiting beliefs, and it usually comes from, maybe someone have said something to you before, like it just might be self-doubt, whatever it might be, right? They are loud when we're resting, right? So it's almost like your brain saying, told you so. Why did you even bother? Why did you get a coach? Because I told you this would happen. Now you look stupid. Now, and your brain is literally saying this to you. And it's like the worst thing ever, right? And this is why I say to my girls all the time, like, if this happens, please tell me, because I want to rewire your brain. And I can't do that if I don't know your thoughts. But a lot of girls feel shame in telling me their thoughts, because they get embarrassed. They get embarrassed that this is their thought process. But it's not. It's just our brains protecting ourselves, because we really want to achieve something, but we don't want to disappoint ourselves or the people around us. So we sabotage ourselves before that can happen, essentially. Like, if you've ever cheated on your diet, for example, you would rather do that than disappoint yourself. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, well, I've just done that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, obviously when you're at home on your own, nothing on, that tends to be when self-doubt crops in, but it's more so when burnout happens because you have no energy to move off the sofa and you have to lay there, and that's when everything that all your fears come to light then, essentially, right? Um, so what breaking the cycle actually requires, right? So as I said, you need to look out for the early warning signs. And that's something that I really, really work on with my clients because I can sense burnout before they can because I recognize it, like some of my girlies, I've worked for years, years and years. So I can sense it before they can sense it. And I tell them to slow down. Sometimes they don't want to hear it, right? Because one of my other clients, I know she won't mind me saying this either. I had to say to her, like, you're doing too much. And she was like, oh, but I love it, she was doing bodybuilding, high rocks, like it was so much running. I was just like, you're gonna crash and burn, like you're really gonna crash and burn. And what happened? She crashed and burned, right? So sometimes with our brains as well, we won't take any advice from anyone. We have to learn the hard way. And the hard way is doing it, not, I don't want to say the term failing, but burning out then, right? Everyone said around you, like, you need to slow down, you're going to burn out. No, I'm not. I'm invincible. I can do anything because our hyper-focused brain tells us we can. And then burnout slaps us in the face. And then we're like, okay, maybe I can't do it all. But then you feel like a failure then because you can't do it all. But like, let's be honest, in what planet can someone run a marathon, compete in bodybuilding and high rocks, right? You'd have to be superhuman. But unfortunately, we have hormones we have to look after, we have health to look after. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, in terms like that, we set ourselves up for failure, really, and then we feel like a failure, which is just wild, isn't it? Our brains are just wild. I find it so interesting. And then addressing the masculine load as well. So like, something I would go over with my girls if they burned out, I'll say to them, like, do you feel like you're masculine day to day? And if they say no, I'll ask them to talk me through their day, right? And sometimes, like, for example, one of my girlies was a hairdresser. She's around clients all the time. She's masking all day. But because this has been her job for years, um, she was like, I never thought I was masking, but she's burnt out every single night. And it's always a Thursday that she was like burnt out. So like 4 days in, can't take it anymore. And then from Thursday onwards, the goal was just in the bin, 2 days off, refreshed again, and this cycle just kept happening. And it's funny because the cycle keeps happening. You think we pick it up ourselves, but we don't. We don't, right? So it's just about addressing the masculine load, and seeing what you can do about it as well. Just take yourself off for 5 minutes. I do it all the time. Like, one of my friends was down here last week, and she's definitely neurodivergent as well, and she just takes herself off. Like, the amount of times I came downstairs, she's not even in the house, she's just taking herself off for a walk. But it's like, when you have friends who understand it, it's like, yeah, cool, do you know what I mean? I'll never go at phone and be like, oh my god, you okay, are you okay, like, fuss her, because that's the worst thing for you, do you know what I mean? So it's like, when you're able to recognize it, you can communicate it, so the next time you burn out, people are not fussing you. Because I feel like that's another thing as well, when people fuss me when I'm burnt out, makes me so angry. I'm like, leave me alone, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Um, and then building in a nervous system regulation is a non-negotiable, right? So it's not a reward for productivity. So lots of us will, hyper focus, get stuff done. We might do like 3 people's work in one day, and then we reward ourselves for it. Like, why are you rewarding yourself for? Do you know what I mean? You just stress yourself out. You've lost sleep. You failing yourself, and now you're going to buy yourself a new pair of heels or trainer. I should say heels, trainers, really, because I never wear heels, but a new pair of trainers or a gym kit. Do you know what I mean? But you're rewarding yourself for that. So you tell your brain, like, good job. And it's reinforcing those habits, when actually we want to be like, right, okay, how can I do this as efficiently as possible without losing myself, without, forgetting to eat, without forgetting to drink, and putting myself first at the same time. How can I do that? Because we don't tend to do that. We just try to do things as quickly as possible, and that's it, right? So learning to tolerate rest without performing recovery, right? So as I said, be okay with resting, right? And I know that's easier said than done, but as I said, it's just about being savvy with your rest days. So I'm not expecting you to just sit down and not do nothing at all, but doing things that are, like, more moderate. Like, as one of my clients said to me, I know she won't mind me saying this, when she goes to the gym, in between, do you know, like when you say, for example, you do a shoulder press and you've done a set, it's a really heavy set, and you're meant to rest, you want to keep the heart rate down and things like that, she skips. She skips in between her sets, right? And I don't know why, I found that so funny, because I was like, right, you may as well not rest if that's the case. Just go straight back into your next working set. Do you know what I mean? So it's like things like that. Like our brains just don't like just sitting there in silence, but so it's about putting things in place so we don't struggle with those things. And then understanding that for neurodivergent women, sustainable is not a personality flaw. It is a survival strategy. And it is something that we have to sort of live with day to day, but it is definitely something that we can avoid, and it is something we can get better at, but we need to recognize it and reflect. So like within my coaching, we do daily habits. Oh my God, the amount of my girlies who hate doing them, but I'm like, please do them, because it reflects on your day. Because we so go, 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 we do shit, train, whatever, go to bed. And we don't actually sit and be like, oh, do you know what? That was quite an overstimulating day. Do you know what I mean? So I love doing my daily habits. I used to find it really annoying, but I probably reflect on my day like, oh, actually, that was quite stressful today. Do you know what I mean? And you can recognize it. Because I know we all want to get to our goal quicker and just, we don't want anything that's inconvenient. But when it comes to our health, our fitness, our goals, whatever, we need to check in on ourselves, because once burnout hits you, like I always say, right, rest before rest chooses you at the the most inconvenient time. Because trust me, like that always happens. Like if you've got things planned, you're going away or whatever, that tends to be when your brain and your body just give up on you, and you're just sitting there crying every day, and you're like, I just don't want to leave the house now. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If there's anything you want to see from me next time, let me know. I do have my next 3 after this planned out, which I think you'll be very interested in. They're all very good topics, but if there's anything else you want me to speak about, let me know.